Obviously, everyone only has one thing on their minds right now, and that's what the heck is cold stratification? Have you ever tried to grow plants from seed? Some plants are easy to sprout, and some of them just never seem to show up when you sow them in the ground. Well, today we're gonna find out why. A lot of plants need something called cold stratification.
Cold stratification?
Wait, don't click away. Don't click away. You got this. It's easier than you think. Okay, I'm gonna break it down to the basics so you can actually have success growing from seed this year. This is fascinating because it shows something really smart about the way Mother Nature designed these seeds. And that means there's a cheat code about how we can trick them into sprouting for us. Let's get it. Okay, you're gonna need a couple of things. Plastic bags that seal at the top, a stratification medium, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's just the stuff that you're gonna put the seeds in. A marker to label the bags, your seeds, and then you'll need the germination codes or Google to find out how long your seed needs to be stratified for. I feel like most people don't understand how weird this is. When you buy tomato seeds, these are plants that grow super fast. Right away you can see sprouts, 3 to 5 days after you plant them. These are annuals, which means they grow from seed to flower to fruit in just one season. And then they die before the winter comes. Most of the native plants I grow are perennials. That means they live multiple years. Some native perennials like lead plant or compass plant are said to live up to 100 years. Perennials grow slower. They invest in their root system, which is the part that stays alive through the nasty winter. All the leaves fall off in the winter, and then in the spring, they grow back. That's a perennial. A perennial pushes out leaves in the spring, then it grows full in the summer and makes a flower. The flower then gets pollinated in order to make a seed. The seed grows and then falls to the ground in fall, maybe around October where I live, but in October, there's only a few nice days left before the winter comes. There's just not enough time for the seed to grow big and strong enough to survive the winter. They would be just tiny little sprouts when the big bad winter comes. The tiny sprouts with tiny little roots are going to get killed by frost by December. So Mother Nature put a timer in these seeds. She said, hey, don't sprout yet, you fools. Winter is coming. There's no way you're gonna survive until spring, so just don't grow yet because you're gonna get clobbered with frost. So the seeds wait the whole winter out. And somehow they know when it's been long enough that the next time it warms up, it's probably spring. We have a lot of false springs here, which is where we have really nice weather for a couple of days and then we have a blizzard for 2 weeks. But these seeds have ancient DNA. It's not their first rodeo. Remember, our native seeds are from here and they know the weather is garbage. And just because it's nice one day doesn't mean it's spring. So they wait and they come out at just the right time. So when we want to grow native plants from seed, we have to make them think that they've been through a whole winter or they won't grow. How do we do that? We cold stratify them. We put them in sand or vermiculite, or some people just do this with a moist paper towel. And then we put them in the fridge for winter. Then after 30, 60, or 90 days, we take them out and the seeds think it's spring, when actually it's probably like mid-February. That's still winter. Then we can start growing them indoors to get starts for our garden, or we can plant them outside after our last frost date. You can skip the process of cold stratifying completely if you use the winter sowing method. That's a very different method. We'll talk about it in a separate video. It means that you plant the seeds outside in little containers so that they cold stratify outside. But today we're talking about cold stratification, the refrigerator method. This is actually cold moist stratification. That's a lot of words, but you need two things. You need cold and you need moisture or it doesn't work at all. I learned how to cold moist stratify seeds from this video by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Actually, the talk was generously done by Dr. Chip Taylor, the founder and director of Monarch Watch. U.S. Fish and Wildlife hosted the webinar on their YouTube channel in 2016. Link is in the description. They stratify hundreds of thousands of milkweed seeds every single year to use in large-scale restorations of native habitat. I'm not claiming I discovered this technique. It's being offered for free to help people do their own restorations. It's worth a watch, but it is a 93-minute PowerPoint.
From a coma or fluff. The simplest way is to get a paper bag.
So I thought I'd take the knowledge of what that video taught me and my personal experience of doing it for a few years. I'm going to condense it for you in 7 steps. Step 1, decide what your stratification medium is going to be. That's just a fancy word for what are you going to put the seeds in. You can't just put the seeds in a plastic bag with water. They'll get too wet, they'll get moldy and die. You want something called a soilless medium. So this is something that doesn't have dirt, clay, or compost in it. There's billions and billions of microbes in the soil, but you don't want billions of microbes living on your tiny little seedlings. They just can't fight against any mold or bacteria. Again, living soil is wonderful for mature plants, but these microbes will kill your seedlings dead in a bag in the fridge. I personally use vermiculite or perlite. I'm using perlite here because it's a little easier to see the seeds. This is what the professionals do. It's what I use because it's accessible to me, but if these things aren't accessible to you, you can also use sand or peat moss. These also work very well. If you use sand, the sand is going to have microbes and mold spores in it, but you can sterilize it by pouring boiling water over the sand and letting it sit until it cools. Pour off the water and let the sand dry out a little bit. I didn't think it would look like that in the video. Anyway, we'll talk about why you don't want to cold stratify in sand that is saturated with water. Okay, step 2, label your bags. There's 3 things you're going to want to write on your bag: the species, the date you began the stratification, and the number of days that particular seed needs to stratify. Here's where you're going to have to use your germination code book or Google to find out how long do I need to stratify this seed for. Based on the species, they're all different. For example, purple coneflower doesn't really need any stratification, but pale purple coneflower needs 90 days of stratification. You would think they're in the same genus, they're kind of a similar looking flower. Maybe they would need the same things, but they don't. So it's very important to look up the needs of your specific species and then write them down on the bag. Step 3, put the stratifying medium in the bag with your seeds. Here, you're just gonna have to use your own judgment. Look at how many seeds you have in the packet. If you have 13 seeds, you probably don't have to fill up this quart-sized bag. You can use quite a bit less. You can go up to half stratifying medium, half seeds. I'm working with really small batches, so I usually use a little bit more stratifying medium than I have seeds. This is kind of what it should look like. You should see the medium kind of clumping up a little bit because of the moisture. You'll see I have a lot more vermiculite than seeds here, but you can still easily see the seeds. They're not getting totally lost in the perlite. Step 4, add water to your mix. Okay, it's not just enough to put the seeds in the fridge for 30 days. They also need moisture to cold stratify. The name is actually cold moist stratification. Just putting the packet of seeds in the fridge won't let them germinate. They need the right amount of moisture, the right amount of cold. That's the secret to unlocking the native seed. So take your bag of seeds and perlite and carefully add enough water. Do this a little bit at a time. Seal the bag and shake it up to distribute the water evenly around the medium. You want enough water that the medium is going to clump together a little bit, but you don't want so much that there's water pooling at the bottom of the bag. This is a big no-no. When we mix it together, we obviously don't get it perfect. So just check, is there water pooling at the bottom? That's okay if there is. Just carefully open the bag a tiny bit in the corner in a controlled way. Just let a little bit of the water run out of the bag. You don't have to do it perfectly. You can always correct. If you feel like it's still looking dry and crumbly, you can just add a little bit of water. Just pay attention to your bag and let it sit for about 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes about 30 minutes for the water to kind of fall out of the mixture and start pooling at the bottom. Then you can open the bag just a little bit and let that water run out. Step 5. Place your completed and sealed bags into the refrigerator for stratification. If some reason this isn't possible, you don't have a refrigerator, whatever reason, you can technically put them in a protected area outside. That means out of the sun and with protection from critters. Ray Major at Trees from Seed on Facebook.
Hello everyone, this is Ray at Trees from Seed.
Puts his tree seeds in one of these raspberry or blueberry plastic clamshell packages and buries them in the ground. I don't do it this way. I just thought it was important to mention that where there's a technical solution, putting them in the fridge, there's also obviously a natural solution when it comes to cultivating these seeds that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Nature doesn't use the fridge. I understand. I just personally use the fridge for convenience. Step 6. Look at your seeds from time to time. Take a look at your seeds every couple of weeks to make sure that they haven't sprouted or started molding. My prairie smoke seedlings started sprouting early last year. I took the bag out of the fridge and there they were, just sprouting in a cold, dark fridge. So if you don't look at your seeds regularly, they might start sprouting and grow these long tails, and then they'll die before you see them again. This probably happens to me about 10% of the time. Also, you can check for mold. If you think that there's some mold starting to grow on your seeds and you want to save them, you can take them out and open the bag to try to air it out and evaporate some of that moisture, because you might have too much moisture in the bag, and hopefully that can save your seeds. But you can only save your seeds if you're checking on them regularly and don't forget about them. If you're like me, you got to set yourself like a calendar alarm or something that says check seeds. There's no shame in that. Time seems to be going really fast lately. Step 7. Okay, you've had your seeds in the fridge for the amount of time that you need to stratify for, and now it's time to plant them. You can either plant them under lights indoors to get small plant starts for your spring planting, or you can wait until after your frost date and plant these seeds outside. After your last frost date is also a great time to give some of these seeds away. Some of us have a lot of seeds because we collected them from our backyards. Giving people seeds that have already been stratified is an awesome gift. You take out all the difficult work cold stratifying them, and you give them away in spring when people are actually wanting to plant. Most people are not going to go through the process of stratifying seeds. So giving away seeds that have already been stratified is really community minded. I'm only covering the stratifying process in this video because the planting and growing process is a whole other ballgame. But I've got 3 more tips for cold stratifying that you can use right now. Tip number 1, label and complete 1 bag at a time. You don't want to have piles of seeds and bags everywhere. I really struggle with keeping track of a bunch of different things at one time. Trust me, when you have different kinds of seeds and they're not labeled, it can be very easy to get confused and forget what you're working with. I take out 1 packet of seeds. I use the information on the seed packet to label the bag with the number of days. I put the vermiculite and the seeds in the bag, pour in the water, adjust the water if needed, close it up, and put it to the side before I grab another bag. If I don't do it this way, I make a huge mess and I have no idea what's in these bags. Tip number 2, sometimes your seeds will sprout in the fridge. This is a tough one. The solution to this is that you have to plant the seeds right away. That means you have to plant them immediately indoors if you have a grow light set up, or if you don't have a grow light set up, you will have to plant them outside, maybe protect them with a little cage from rabbits, and hope for the best. Remember, these seeds were just in the refrigerator, so it's okay to plant them outside if it's 40 degrees. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen to me every year with at least 1 batch. It seems so crazy that they would want to sprout in a cold, dark refrigerator, but these plants are go-getters. Tip number 3, follow the germination instructions exactly, but a lot of seeds are kind of flexible. If it says they need to be stratified for 90 days, you can break the rules if you run out of time. Try stratifying for half the time. Let's say if the seed packet says that it needs 30 days, you can sometimes get away with 2 weeks and still get some good germination. For Echinacea pallida, this plant needs 90 days of stratification. I'm honestly going to pull half the seeds out in 30 days and plant them indoors to see if they will still germinate. So if the plant wants 90 days and I pull it out after 30, I'm probably not going to get the same germination rate as if I had stratified for the full 90 days. So that's why I bought extra seeds. It worked great for me last year, so I'm gonna do it again this year. If I were a professional operation and I was growing these plants to sell, I would probably be a little bit more organized about it, but it's just me. I'm not profiting from these plants, so I don't care. If you've ever stratified seeds before, leave a comment below. Let us know if you have any tips or shortcuts for somebody doing this for the first time. Let's get planting.